said he is not running for the re-election. I want to talk about that decision and what went into that. But on what Pence said, do you think he's right that history is going to hold Trump accountable for January 6th?
Well, he's absolutely right. I've been saying this since January 6th, and I'm really glad that he came out and said it. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Mike Pence. I think he did the right thing on January 6th, and I'm glad he's now speaking out more strongly than he did before.
Some of the criticism is, well, you know, he's not testifying. He didn't testify before January 6th. He's so far trying to not fully testify, give a complete testimony to Jack Smith, the special counsel.
I think it's really important that we have as much transparency as possible and that we get to the bottom of it. But look, a lot of people have been afraid to say anything about it. And I think the fact that Mike Pence is getting stronger and speaking out more is a good thing. And, you know, I worked very closely with him the whole time he was vice president, all during COVID, as I led the nation's governors. I think he's doing the right thing. And I'm going to be with Mike Pence in Iowa this weekend.
Why the change? Sorry.
It sounds like you think he should testify.
I don't know whether he should testify or not. I'm not his lawyer, and I don't know what the details of the request are. But I think it's good that he is pretty strongly saying that Donald Trump should be held accountable.
Now, why the change for him? I mean, Caitlin was at the Gridiron dinner, and she heard the comments, and she said the room, usually it's ha, 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 laugh, 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 and then everyone sort of, were you at the dinner?
No, I've been there before, but I missed this one.
So then why the change for him, considering what he said? He fought the special counsel. He didn't speak to the January 6th committee. And he also praised the media, is my understanding from Caitlin. Why the change for Mike Pence all of a sudden? You said he's getting stronger, but what does that mean?
Look, I think Pence has been one of the few that have been, you know, he stood up pretty strongly on January 6th. His life was being threatened. He was in the garage of the Capitol, and then he came back and did his job, which, as people were chanting, hang Mike Pence. So not the first time he's stood up, in my opinion. But I don't know why the morphing, but I think it's now more and more people are starting. I've been saying this for 2 years, but more and more people are starting to say this was wrong. We need to move in a different direction away from Trump. And Mike Pence is one of those people.
Can we talk a bit about the direction you think the party should go in? Caitlin anchored State of the Union yesterday and did a really fascinating interview with a name maybe not as familiar to many in the party as you, but Vivek Ramaswamy, who's an entrepreneur, who is well-known in conservative circles, who just said that your party's just got it wrong on the vision. Here's what he told Caitlin.
And I think the opportunity for the GOP now is not just to complain about wokeness or gender ideology or climate ideology, but actually to go upstream and fill that black hole with a vision of American national identity that runs so deep that it dilutes these agendas to irrelevance and actually unifies us as a country. And I'm running because I believe genuinely that I'm the candidate best positioned to actually deliver national unity by reawakening that shared American identity.
I should note he's written even books on wokeness, but that's the argument he makes, that we, some of the loudest voices, like Trump, DeSantis, are focusing on the wrong things if we want to win.
Well, I agree with that completely. It's what I've been saying for 8 years, and it's what I spoke about at the Reagan Institute about a week after the 2020 election. It's what I spoke about at the Reagan Library this summer. We've got to focus on a hopeful, more positive vision for America. We've got to, successful politics is about addition and multiplication. It's not about subtraction and division. And our party's been doing a lot of dividing and subtracting. And we haven't focused on the things that the average American cares about. And it's what, my entire efforts have been about.
But that's what's so confounding for people, that you're not running.
Yeah, well, there's a whole lot of people, I think, that are moving into that lane, that are starting to say those kinds of things. That maybe they weren't speaking out as loudly as I was, but I'm glad they are now. I said a couple of years ago, I felt like I was in a lifeboat by myself, and there was the SS Titanic. Trump was going by. More and more people are jumping off the boat. What? We now need a bigger boat.
You've ruled out running for the GOP nomination. You haven't totally ruled out an independent bid. It's very hard. I don't have to tell you that.
Yeah, no, it's nearly impossible, and it wasn't something that I'm thinking about or really considering. But there was a hypothetical. Would you rule that out? It was like, well, you never know.
So what is your role in 2024? Are you a foe to Trump? Are you just...
I'd like to make sure that the party does not nominate Donald Trump, because I think that's really bad for the Republican Party and bad for the country, and probably bad for Donald Trump. So I'm going to try to see if we can't find the best possible candidate that can appeal to a broader group of people, and that not only can win a primary, which everybody seems to be focused on, but that can have a message that appeals to a broader group of people and could actually, win a general election in November.
It seems that more people who are in the party who are trying to sink, what do you call it, the SS Trump, right, are trying to sink the SS Trump, right, rather than keep it afloat as had been previously, right, in recent history. So then who do you think among the group now, or potentially, who would be the best? Who is the best chance?
It's a great question. Nobody's really risen up, in my opinion. I can't point to one person and say, oh, I'm really excited, this is the one. But we have a long time to play out. First of all, we don't even know who's going to run. There's only a couple of candidates in the race, and we've got a long time until the first primary takes place.
How do you feel about the Ron DeSantis approach vis-a-vis private corporations? I'm just fascinated by the fact that is the GOP now the company of big government and let's get entangled with how corporations operate, or is that just a one-off with we want to punish Disney for their stance
which
on
Vivek criticized?
Yeah, on
well,
my
I mean,
education
I
bill.
spoke out against a couple of those steps that Ron DeSantis took. I mean, look, he's got every right to have his opinions. I think he's out there making a case. He's capturing a lot of attention. But I don't. It didn't seem like small government conservatism to have a governor ordering businesses to agree with him, or he's going to put them out of business.
Can I ask you one thing before you go about Nikki Haley? She is on the campaign trail. She is in the race. She suggested raising the retirement age for beneficiaries. People who are in their 20s now says that they should raise it. You agree with her?
I didn't hear her say that, but obviously entitlements are an issue that they're going to have to debate over the next year. It's something we've got to figure out, but no, I'm not sure I agree with that.
You don't agree with that?
No.
Why not?
I just don't think it's the right thing to do.
All right, well, that was a fascinating conversation. I mean...
That answers that.
When you've said enough, we'll leave it there.
All right.
I think, Governor, it's interesting that, people like you who are considered to be sort of traditional conservatives outside of the MAGA wing of the party, it's disappointing to, moderates or people who are in the center that you're not running.
Well, thank you very much. I say I come from the Republican wing of the Republican Party. Yeah. We're going to hopefully get back on track.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Governor Hogan. All right.